bringing you a lot of updates about the movie's performance, often highlighting things that simply aren't being reported on by the mainstream media. And just to quickly recap some of the bigger stories that you may have seen here on this channel, I was one of the first to report that Superman was technically a box office flop, that it wouldn't beat Zack Snyder's Man of Steel at the box office, that James Gunn's Superman fared very poorly at the box office compared to past Superman movies after adjusting for inflation. I also explained that in spite of all the positive media spin that Warner Brothers themselves have been pushing, behind the scenes they've actually been frantic to make up some of their losses on this movie, which is likely why they had rushed Superman to VOD streaming sooner than expected, while seemingly bypassing James Gunn in the process. Finally, I also reported that Superman's streaming numbers were also disappointing for Warner Brothers, and even though I initially got a lot of pushback for my reports, I think gradually, at least some people are starting to come around to accepting that James Gunn's Superman is not quite the success story that the mainstream media has been trying to sell us, no matter how hard they try. And in this video, I'm going to be presenting you with some additional receipts that support my claims that things may not be as great as they seem. But before we begin, if it's not too much trouble, please take a second to like and subscribe, especially if you want to keep getting exclusive DCU updates as they happen.
Do it.
First of all, if you recall, initially James Gunn said that Superman wouldn't be available for streaming until the end of August, but suddenly, almost from one day to another, he had to admit that they were immediately rolling out Superman for digital release on demand. And rather than Gunn admitting that this was actually because the movie wasn't making enough money at the worldwide box office, which is what I was saying, Gunn said that this was only because Superman was a companion piece to Peacemaker, a TV series which was somehow the official launchpad of his entire DCU.
We have the setting up of all of the rest of the DCU in this season of Peacemaker. It's incredibly important.
Well, now that we've seen the first two episodes of Peacemaker, Gunn's explanation sounds even more absurd than it already did initially, as not only did the first episode of Peacemaker contain a very naughty, full frontal party at his house with people who play for both teams, Gunn then further doubled down on this idea in episode 2 of Peacemaker by showing the same naughty party again, as it was still ongoing at his house, and it also suggested that Peacemaker himself was fond of dudes again. I mean, you'd think that after the response to episode 1, Gunn could have potentially edited out that part from episode 2, but nope, Gunn went all in on the naughty full frontal parties. Which is strange because if Gunn was supposedly hired to bring a family-friendly vibe to the DCU, which is something that was implied in the past, how is Peacemaker supposed to be Gunn's main launchpad into his DC cinematic universe? I mean, I don't understand how all this works, and honestly, I'm not even sure Gunn himself knows. And now there's some new spin about how Peacemaker is doing great numbers on streaming for Warner Brothers, with Samba TV claiming that 22% more people watched the Peacemaker Season 2 premiere than they did the Season 1 finale. And while at first glance, that sounds rather impressive, but when you consider that Peacemaker's viewership numbers were only 712,000 viewers for the premiere, it's not really all that good. I mean, in comparison, Penguin's first episode had 3.2 million people watching, so Peacemaker is not even in the same league as that show. Not even close. And if you were wondering if, as Gunn explained, Peacemaker's premiere somehow helped boost Superman's box office numbers or digital streaming numbers, well, I got news for you. It didn't really help at all. If you recall, after I had reported that Superman was struggling to make a significant mark on VOD streaming charts, Warner Brothers had dropped its price, and today they actually dropped it again. And I know some of you are going to say, well, so what? They keep dropping the price of Superman on demand in order to give more people an incentive to rent and buy it. And you know what? Under some circumstances, I could possibly accept that. However, let's zoom out for a second and objectively look at all the events from the past 2 weeks and put them all in perspective. On August 15th, in what appeared to be a hasty and impulsive decision from Warner Brothers, Superman was rushed to digital streaming ahead of schedule right after James Gunn said that it wouldn't happen, suggesting that Warner Brothers may not have even consulted with him about it. Then, within the next 2 weeks, Superman saw 2 significant price drops to try and boost sales, and meanwhile, Peacemaker, the show that James Gunn said was the foundation of his entire DC cinematic universe, only got about 22% of the viewership that Penguin did. And all of this was happening just as Superman's worldwide box office had grinded to a complete halt, and it became even more clear than ever that Gunn would never be able to beat Zack Snyder's Man of Steel box office from 2013, and and that's before we even adjusted the number for inflation, which would be an even bigger embarrassment for Warner Brothers and Gunn. And for those of you that are going to say, well, it's not fair to compare Gunn's movie from 2025 to a movie from 2013, Gunn also underperformed in comparison to Matt Reeves' Batman, which came out 3 years ago. I guess what I'm saying here is that no matter how anybody tries to spin this, at this very moment in time, James Gunn and his DCU have not met the expectations of Warner Brothers CEO David Zaslav, who hired him, and time will tell how much leeway Zaslav is going to give Gunn if he doesn't significantly turn things around. Now, as I've said before, I think Gunn's job is safe for the next year or so, but if Clayface, Lanterns, and especially Supergirl aren't a slam dunk financial bonanza for Warner Brothers, Gunn himself could end up being pushed out as a result. Now, I don't have a crystal ball. Maybe one of those projects will actually succeed, but right now, I think Gunn's performance is likely being observed very carefully, and if you've been enjoying my videos and want me to keep you posted with all the latest DCU developments, please consider liking and subscribing, as it would really help an independent entertainment news channel like myself. Thanks for watching, my friends. Thank you, and good day.
I am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos, but I'm